I want to talk for a minute about not just GOTV work, but figuring out how GOTV work is most effective. And you start with this, at this point in the race, it's called GOTV because it's get out the vote. It's less than a month. This is really pedal to the metal time. So it's more about what are the most urgent places, what are the most urgent battlegrounds that we can put our money to, we can put our heart to, we can put our time to, you name it. So we talk a lot about swing states, and swing states are actually up for contention. So not everybody agrees what are the swing states. So you can have a conversation with my buddy Jonathan Green, and he will have one set of ideas, and my buddy Jared Goldhaber will have a slightly different set of ideas. And all these pundits will weigh in as they do on their websites. In the meantime, there is a general sense that 270 to Win is one of my favorite websites. They do an overall average of what they call the consensus for swing states. So it's not Cook Political Report, it's not necessarily Larry Sabato, it's not necessarily Real Clear Politics. It's a combination of a whole lot of stuff and a whole lot of polling. And that's what I've used here to inform this conversation. Again, it's not by any means absolute and complete, it's just a sense. And obviously the swing states that are involved in presidential battles are not obviously the same that are involved in House battles or in senatorial battles. So you might be calling for the presidential race in certain states, but you might actually be calling for a senatorial race in a completely different state. Now let me see how I get this. All right, okay. So by consensus, the presidential swing states, there's fewer than you might think that you've heard bandied about, but this is again kind of the most absolute consensus of everybody, are Arizona, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Florida is always going to be a swing state, always, always, always. And people love Florida because, as Harold said before, it's got a ton of electoral votes attached to it. So whoever wins it gets a mother load. People aren't really going to fight that hard about states like, say, Montana or Utah, because that's 3 or 6 electoral votes. Like, that's okay. We'll let the other guys take those states. We want to worry about where those electoral bang for the buck are. So those are the states right now that I think are worth paying attention to in terms of doing GOTV work there. So again, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Ohio. And again, there are options from texting to phone banking to postcards, you name it. If you're interested in the Senate, which is again, according to my friend Jonathan Green, it's just as important or more important for us to win the Senate than it is to win the presidency, because the Senate, obviously, witness Mitch McConnell, controls an enormous amount of what gets done or not done in Washington. Again, lots and lots of interesting fights here. But the ones that I think are truly toss-ups, truly, really contested, as opposed to really leaning Democratic or really leaning Republican, are Montana, Iowa, and North Carolina. There are plenty of other close races, but those are the 3 that truly could go either way, where time and money will make a big difference. And as my pal Jerry always says, $50 in Iowa goes a lot further than $50 in New York. So if you make your donations, think about making donations in those states where money goes further, if that is something that you're inspired to do. And for the House, there's obviously a lot more races because every single House member is up for re-election. There are about 26 toss-up races, if you believe this particular consensus view of things. Don't be afraid of this map. It looks really, really red. But like I said, a lot of those red states have almost no electoral votes. They have 2, they have 3, they have 5, or they have to have at least 3, but not so many. So just because there's a lot of red doesn't mean, all is lost. It's again, these 26 states that have races that are up for contention. So again, if you want to put your money or your time somewhere, I chose of the 26 races to just bring up the few that are close to us, and based on the New York, New Jersey, Florida geography that really represents the vast majority of CBST. Lots of you voted for and supported Max Rose 2 years ago. He's up for re-election, and that is still a hotly contested seat. So that's in Brooklyn and Staten Island. And also in New York is District 22, which is up by, I believe, Syracuse. It's Anthony Brindisi. He is an incumbent Democrat, But again, it's a very Republican country that he's running in. So it could go either way. And for New York 2, which happens to be Nassau County, Peter King is retiring. So that's actually got no incumbent, which means that there is a chance, albeit not a huge chance, but a chance that the Democrats could take that seat as well. And as far as New Jersey goes, the one real toss-up happens to be an incumbent Republican, which is New Jersey 02 and Jeff Van Drew. We have a chance to make that blue. And for Florida, the one really truly toss-up race is Debbie Mukersel-Powell. She's the incumbent Democrat in Florida 26. So if you're in her district or you know somebody there, by all means, you know, participate and help her win. Okay. So in terms of ideas, before I get into the nitty-gritty of how to set yourself up with these specific things, I just wanted to make sure that people had the overview. Right now in the race, texting and phone banking are considered the most effective tools, because letter and postcard writing, we're getting toward the end of letter writing and postcard writing in terms of just the amount of time left in the race. So not that you can't do it, but just that it's having a conversation one-on-one, whether that's via text or via phone, is closer to an in-person conversation than letter and postcard writing can be. It's also a way to reach out to people in very, very diverse places. The other two things I think that we should talk about briefly are leveraging your networks. And this doesn't mean going through your entire Rolodex. It doesn't mean reaching out to every single person you know on Facebook. It's just about thinking about who you know and who do you know who lives in one of those swing states that we just talked about. And does everybody you know, are they all registered to vote? Do they all have a plan to vote? My pal Sasha Soroff has been working all summer long on her 2 elderly aunts in Chicago who need help figuring out how they're going to vote this year. And so she took it on herself to do just that, make sure that they were registered. So everyone knows people like that. You either know people in swing states or you have relatives who are elderly who might need some advice. After all, this election is very different. Leverage your networks however you feel comfortable doing it. And of course, the easiest thing to do in many ways is donating. And there's no minimum donation. You can give somebody $1. You can donate $5 someplace. It doesn't have to be that only rich people donate to political causes. The only drag is you can't get, a tax refund. On the other hand, you're doing something good. So if you do have a little extra money, and I know that that's not something that a lot of people have in these times, which are difficult, consider donating it, especially to some of those states where your dollars go further. Because it costs a lot less to run TV ads in Iowa than it does in Pennsylvania. So if you're interested in texting, I highly, highly recommend that, especially for folks who are a little nervous about phone calls or they're a little anxious about what it might be like to talk to strangers on the phone. Texting is I call it a gateway drug. It's a great way to get started. And my experience with texting has been, in general, you get about a 10% response, which is really, really good because people respond to texts whenever they want, as opposed to a phone call, either they're home or they're not.
That's true.
So it becomes, I think, really a really good way to build some confidence. And the texting that exists out there is so sophisticated, and they have thought of every possible question that you will have. And the interactive tools are so sophisticated that it's like they hold your hand the whole way. So if you're thinking about doing any kind of texting, I recommend that. It's a very low bar to enter. You don't need to be particularly techie. You could do it on a laptop, you could do it on a desktop, you could do it on a phone in many cases. It's just a question of what you prefer. Resistance Labs is one of my go-to places, largely because they aggregate for a lot of small grassroots campaigns that can't afford all this technology, but because they're doing it through an umbrella organization, they can actually do that. So you're talking about, Randi mentioned earlier about the voters in Florida that got the former felons that got their right to vote back. There is a whole campaign of texting going on called FRRC, which is the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. And that's a group that was funded by LeBron James, and they are offering to pay fines for all of those who are formerly incarcerated felons who just don't have the money to pay off the last bit of their court fees or whatever kind of, nonsense they need that's keeping them from voting. So between LeBron James and Michael Bloomberg, there's a nice pot of money out there for people to take advantage of. And this texting just connects people with that opportunity and says, hey, if you have a problem when you need some money paying off your court fines or you know someone, here's where to go. So that's a great opportunity to reach out. And again, it's on Resistance Labs. They have a ton of opportunities and they change every day. Another great place to go is Field Team 6. Again, they partner with local organizations and they're texting and phone banking to register voters and return purged voters to the polls. Again, you're not doing this for a particular candidate. You're just saying it's really important to vote. We want you to feel like you have the vote and that your vote matters, and we're going to help you do that. And then Mobilize US, which happens to be the sort of umbrella Democratic organization, but we're going to pretend I didn't use that bad D word. Aggregates, again, small and large scale actions from in-person things you can do to texting and phone banking and postcard writing all over the country. If you want a particular candidate, if you want to pick, a certain area, if you want to pick, an issue, if you want to do this by issue, you can do that. Mobilize US is a great overall umbrella that gives you a ton of choices. And phone banking, I would say for phone banking, again, you can go back to Mobilize US. The great thing about phone banking now is because no one's doing in-person phone banking where you all get together in a big office. And like for people who came to my apartment 2 years ago, we sit around the table. The phone banking now is so sophisticated. They have Zoom trainings and they have recorded videos. So you can, instead of listening to a session, you can actually just listen to the recorded video and watch them, and they'll take you through what the phone banking looks like. They'll take you through what the scripts are. They'll take you through how to answer the questions. They'll take you through the logistics of setting up your phone, and depending on which kind of software you're using, either you're calling through your phone, you're calling through a computer, you're either dialing by hand or you're not. It all depends on which campaign you're part of. But because of COVID, the technical support has gotten a whole lot better and has made it, I think, a whole lot more accessible for folks. I would say other than that, you can use two other sites that I like a lot are Turnout 2020, which is, again, not so much specific to states, it's specific to voters in swing states who are inconsistent voters. So folks that don't always turn up and turn out, and making sure that they know where to vote, and how important that vote is. And similarly, Reclaim Our Vote is a partnership with the Center for Common Ground, which is reaching out to mostly voters of color in states that have been largely gerrymandered and that have experienced a ton of voter suppression over the years. So these are people who are not used to getting phone calls. They're not used to getting any kind of outreach. And the beautiful thing about Reclaim Our Vote, it is truly nonpartisan because you're not telling them who to vote for. You're just giving them all the information they need to know to make sure they're registered, to make sure they know how they can vote, to make sure they know where their polling place is, to make sure they know what the deadlines are. It's all informational. So I have had so many wonderful moving conversations on Reclaim Our Vote that I can't recommend it enough as far as that goes. And there's always writing. Like I said, I don't want to tell anyone not to do that because we've been doing it for a long time. Some of you were with us at CBST on Friday nights, and we used to write the letters encouraging people to vote. That campaign, which is called the Big Send, is still going on. There have been 10 million out of 15 million letters written. And on October 17th, they're all going to get sent. So if you go on to voteforward.org and you sign up to be a writer, they will then send you letters, and they will send you a list of names and addresses. If the letters are pre-written, all you need to do is fill in why you vote and then sign your name. Mail it off, address it to whomever it's going to. Again, they're largely swing states, swing districts, and they're letters to folks who have either registered as independents or they haven't registered at all, or they voted as Democrats, but inconsistently over the last several elections. And of course, there's always postcards to voters. This again is a varying list of campaigns. They serve as an umbrella organization for campaigns to go to get folks to write postcards. Most of them are specific to, say, the Attorney General's race in Ohio, or the House race in Montana, or this particular local state race in Pennsylvania. You name it. but they've got a ton of great campaigns, and it's very easy to use. The other organization that I didn't put down here, but it's also great, Sarah Sloan mentioned it earlier, is called Postcards for America. It's the same thing, postcards to swing states, encouraging people to vote, get out the vote, making sure people understand really what's at stake. And I would say if you want, the other thing you can do if you want to work and do something that will really contribute is either offer to be a poll worker like Harold did. And I don't think there are deadlines in most states, because states are really, really, they really need new poll workers, because a lot of the poll workers are over 60 and folks are not going to do that this year because of COVID. So most states are in desperate need of them. There are two great phone and text banking organizations that I've been involved in. One is called Poll Hero, which is, you can join to both text and phone bank to recruit college students to work at the polls on election day. So it's an organization that is available for the entire country. So different voting districts will articulate the fact that they need folks, and they'll go to Poll Hero, and Poll Hero will find them people in wherever that district is who can work at the polls. Similarly, Power to the Polls is another one of these great sites that's working to recruit poll workers where they are needed in states where if they don't have enough poll workers, they're just going to close the polls. And obviously that's not a solution. I mean, you heard what Randy said about Texas. Texas has decided that they're going to have one drop-off box for ballots for each county. And I forgot whether it's Richardson County, one of the counties has something like, 2 million people in it, or some ridiculous number, which is insane. But obviously that's an example of voter suppression. They don't want people to use those drop-off boxes, and they'd rather people stay at home because they think people aren't going to want to go in person to vote because of COVID. So voting is just the most important sacred thing we can do these days. And it's also kind of the most low-hanging fruit. So I would also say go back to the CBST website and click on CBST Votes, because if you don't live in one of the 3 states that we've been concentrating on, there's lots of resources for the other states if you need help figuring out how you're going to vote yourself, and or if you want to send people someplace to figure out where they're going to vote. If you want to be involved on a more regular basis, I would say join us on Thursdays. This slide will give you the Zoom link where we meet from 12:30 to about 1:15, 1:30. And really, it's an opportunity to share what each of us is doing individually, what's working, what's not working, how we can get more involved, and really to troubleshoot. And often it's just a lot of schmoozing and a lot of complaining and grousing. And then, of course, we rely on people like Jerry Goldhaber, who's very much got his finger on the pulse here at CNN to tell us what's really going on. So it's a great way to participate and get more involved and get information. And then you can get involved in whatever way works for you, either a ton or just a very little bit. So I just vomited an enormous amount of information at you. And as Rabbi James said, all of this is coming to you in a PowerPoint tomorrow. So don't get worried. I would like to, because we have a couple of minutes, I would like to open the floor to some questions. So if people know how to use the chat function and raise your hands, I would be delighted to call on people. Okay, now, okay, so if no one raises their hands, I'll be mortified. I could keep talking, but you really don't want me to keep. Hold on. Okay, but you have to, if you're not talking, you need to mute.
Participants.
Okay. So you have to go into participants if you want to raise your hand electronically. And I am, okay, Hannah, I'm calling on you.
Okay, so I hope a quick question. In terms of donations, there are, there are a couple of organizations that like Act Blue, I think, or something like that.
Yes.
Where you can, if you donate to them, they will give it where it's necessary.
Yes, very true.
And that's my thinking. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. I think a couple of organizations have similar philosophies, like Swing Left does the same thing. They have something called the Immediate Impact Fund at Swing Left. And again, they will take your money and give it to whichever race, whichever candidate needs it the most. So there's a lot of folks who are using that, but definitely Act Blue is a great way to go if you don't want to pick a particular race or a particular candidate. Sarah Sloan, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was going to say, with all the fancy talking that we're doing, which is all very important, there's also the question that a lot of us know older people who need escorts or want escorts to voting. I know that I've committed to 3 older women, 1 in the building and 2 in the local synagogue I go to, that I will go with them to early voting. And while I can't help them vote, I can help them get to the right table in the armory.
Right, right.
And I suggest that to anyone. Maybe even put up a sign if you live in a large building. Need help getting to the polls?
That's a great idea. I love that idea, and that's such a and I love the way you reached out to your neighborhood. By all means, do that, especially because we have early voting in New York. You don't have to vote all on the same day. You know, you can pick a time when you don't think it's going to be super crowded and just go over there. So that's a great idea, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Leslie, I saw your hand.
Can you hear me? Hi, Sabrina.
Yep. Hey, Leslie.
Thanks for doing this. It's fantastic. I just want to say that if anybody is thinking about being a poll worker, I did the training in the Bronx. It was very orderly, very straightforward. Highly recommended if anybody's thinking of it. That's it.
That's great.
And I'm actually assigned to be an accessibility clerk. So just building on what Sarah said, if people are having accessibility issues, there will be people at the polls to help them.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. Mark Epstein, I see your hand up, but you have to unmute yourself. Yes.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There are a lot of emails coming out now where I think it's from the DSCC, where if you vote for a particular person or set of people, they say that they will triple match you. So $25 contribution on your part becomes $100. My question, and I've been asked a few people, nobody seems to know, where does that matching fund come from?
I have to tell you, Mark, and I hate to put this pin in your balloon. I've heard that that's bullshit. I've heard that that's just a ploy that they use to get you to donate. I have no idea if that's true or not, but I heard from a reliable source that apparently that's something that the folks who are managing social media for a lot of these campaigns are doing just to encourage voters. So I have no other information than that. I just thought I would share that. I don't know, Jerry, do you have any other information about that? Jerry, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Mark was just asking about, you know how when you see these signs that say, you know, if you donate $25, we'll triple match it so you can it'll be $100. And Mark was asking, where is the money coming from, that extra $75? I said to him that I had heard on good authority that that was bullshit, that there was actually no matching that was going on.
I've heard the same thing.
Okay.
Pick the races you want to donate to and just send your check in. Don't worry. And remember, like Sabrina said, the money goes a lot farther in places like Iowa, certain districts in Nebraska, you know.
Right.
Close race in Kansas.
Yeah, exactly. Very true. Good. Okay.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So Debbie, I see your hand up.
Hello.
Hi.
I wanted to sort of.
Hang on, we just lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I have a car, and I would be willing to, during the early voting time, and even on November 3rd, you know, drive people to the voting polls and wait for them. I had been a poll worker in the past, but I am concerned about COVID because I, you know, you know, so I don't know where I would get people who might want to go. I live in Queens. You know, I could put a sign in my building, but I don't know. I thought that there are, you know, a lot of people at CBST that live in Queens also. And I had a thought about, because New York is really, you know, is maybe not as important. I had been the last 3 elections in Pennsylvania,
Right.
and I don't mind driving to Pennsylvania, but I can't get out and be around people. So
no, I know that's a tricky thing. I think you're right. You know what I would do? I would actually, if I were you, I would reach out to your local party, like your local, the Queens Democratic Party, and say, I have a car, put me to use somehow. Like, and this is what I'm willing to do, and this is what I'm not willing to do. They'll be delighted to hear from you. So I think that's a great way to start.
Thank you. Yep.
Great. Okay. Anybody else? Rabbi Kleinbaum, are you just waving or do you have a question?
I have a point to make because I'm a co-host. I can't actually raise it electronically. I apologize.
Okay. That's all right.
I want to make one point about Pennsylvania where Jerry Goldhaber rightly pointed out that the polls are looking very good. But the problem is Pennsylvania has this very complex voting thing called the naked ballot. And we're looking at a possible way of suppressing the vote by 100,000 ballots, because in Pennsylvania, they have this very complex thing. To vote, you have to by mail. Your envelope has to be inside another envelope for it to be accepted. So it means you can't even, like in New York, you just send the envelope back. It has to be this double envelope thing. And if it's not a double envelope, even if the ballot is filled out correctly, they will throw that thing out. Yep. So a lot of, and obviously this is done in order to throw out the vote. We know why. It's totally nefarious. That's why Pennsylvania is a tough state, because without Pennsylvania, it's a hard road going forward, without saying anything partisan. So I wouldn't just write off Pennsylvania because the polls look so good.
Oh, no.
Right. And that because Pennsylvania is close to us, like we did last time, some people actually went there, but it is harder, I know, because of COVID. Pennsylvania stays high up on the list of very delicate states. And this is what Randi was talking about. The attempt to throw out the vote is so, there is one party that wants to make sure everybody who wants to vote votes, and one party who is doing everything they can to make sure that voting is limited. And this is just a actual statement of fact. And you'll look in states in which, the 3 states in which Hillary lost by 10 or 15,000 votes per state in one county. Michigan was one, Wisconsin was one, and Pennsylvania was one.
Pennsylvania's another one, yeah.
Are really key. And that's why the party which is interested in limiting the number of people who vote, the Republican Party, is working very hard in Pennsylvania to enforce this naked ballot rule. It's bizarre. You could fill out the ballot completely correctly, 1,000% correctly, but if you don't have the envelope inside the other envelope correctly, it's thrown out.
Yep.
So how do we counteract that, Rabbi and Sabrina?
So I totally agree with Sabrina's basic analysis. It's just Pennsylvania, and I'm just saying you can't only look, part of it is you can't only look at where the polls are going.
Right.
Because sometimes those places where the polls are leaning in a certain way, there's tremendous effort to suppress or undermine the vote. There are groups in Pennsylvania. Randi, do you want to say something about Pennsylvania?
There's so many groups. There's
a lot in Pennsylvania, so I've asked Randi to come back in and say something about Pennsylvania.
There's Pennsylvania Stands Up. There's Turnout 2020 does a lot of work in Pennsylvania. There's Turn PA Blue.
Yep, Pennsylvania is just, without being partisan, there are lots and lots of people who are worried about Pennsylvania. Because of the 3 states that the polling suggested that Hillary was going to win, that she lost in 2016, all 3 states, people are very concerned about voter suppression and all sorts of other things. Wisconsin, for example, has there's been a lot of court action. Right now in Pennsylvania, both parties, both the Republican and the Democratic Party, are up at the Supreme Court trying to clarify the rules. But if the Supremes don't rule on this until, the U.S. Supreme Court, they won, the Democratic Party won in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So I would just put Pennsylvania up there because it's very, very, very confusing right now. And there's also lots of new registration that has happened in terms of one party instead of the other party.
Right. And that makes them very nervous.
Can I just say, Sabrina, I do this for a living. You were fabulous. I do this for a living, but it was just really the stuff that you and Harold put together. Really, really, really fabulous.
Oh, thanks. Well, good.
My staff tomorrow.
You're an inspiration to all of us, Rand.
Sabrina, she's already tweeted it out. It's already a tweet.
Okay, Harold's going to make sure that he's got his photos credited, right? Just be sure that the photos are credited. Just kidding. Anyway, does anybody else have anything else they want to add? Any of the regulars in my group? Any questions or any offers of support or advice to folks getting involved? I would just say do it. If you can do it with someone else.
Can you see me, Sabrina? I'm raising my hand, both physical and virtual.
Yes, I see.
Hey, I just want, and I put it in the chat, that for the last couple of elections, I've been working with election protection. I don't know how much good I do. And it's, during the primary, I went to different polling places to see if there are any backlogs or if there's any problems. But there's also this interesting thing where you can just stay home and check Twitter and Facebook and make sure there's not misinformation going out. So there's some interesting things that if you just want to do it at home during the day, during the election, they have options. And it's election protection, just Google them.
And I should also add the Democratic Party is collecting lawyers to do legal work.
Yes. If you go onto that site mobilize.us, you can type in a whole bunch of different categories. One of those categories is election protection. So you can type that in and they'll give you all the different opportunities that you can get involved with that as well.
So this is
a great umbrella.
Marilyn Michon, I wanted to say something.
Sure.
This is an absentee ballot from Suffolk County, and there are also 2 envelopes that you have to return.
Yes.
And I want to say there is someone running against Zeldin, who is the worst. Well, I'm not supposed to say anything about candidates, but Nancy Garoff.
We really can't talk about candidates on this call, Marilyn.
Okay.
We can talk about supporting candidates who respect our values. Please go out and vote and support those candidates who respect our values, but no names of particular.
Okay.
And Sabrina, we ended a little early in the other room.
Great.
So if anyone has any technical questions about filling out and returning ballots, I'm here. I don't want to jump. I'm here if you need me.
Okay. Thank you.
We have several people with their hands up, Sabrina.
Yes. Okay. So I see Debbie again. No?
No, I didn't put it up again.
Hannah, you raising your hand again?
Yeah, just like in terms of Pennsylvania again. So what can someone from New York do in Pennsylvania?
You can
physically, or
you can make phone calls, you can send texts. The sites I like for Pennsylvania are Turn PA Blue. If you look at the chat, I put them in the chat a few minutes ago. One is called Turn PA Blue and the other one is called Pennsylvania Stands Up. They both do phone banking and texting to voters to give them information and make sure that they know where and how they can vote this year. So those are 2 great Pennsylvania organizations specifically. Ellen Ratner, I see you.
Yes, hi, thanks for everything you're doing. Sabrina, what do you know about physical intimidation at the polls? And what do we say to people if they are afraid of that?
I know pretty much what everyone else knows, that it's been threatened and that there's a lot of talk of it in certain counties and certain states. I think that they're preparing for things like that. We saw what happened early in Virginia, I guess. I think when you talk to people, if they're afraid of that, then that's a very legitimate concern. I think that, the hope is that on the ground, those either Democratic or election supervisors, attorneys general, whatever, are aware of it and are getting people out there to make sure that they're protected. On the other hand, it's an unfortunate reality of gerrymandering and the current political landscape. So if you can vote by mail instead, maybe if you're worried about that, maybe you should vote by mail in a county like that.
Okay, great. We'll tell them. You're terrific. You are a veritable font of knowledge.
And Thank you. So who else haven't we heard from? Mark Epstein, you have another question?
Yeah, just quickly wanted to, I didn't see it on the slides, so I just wanted to quickly mention the website fairfight.com.
Oh, yes.
In terms of fighting voter suppression. So I recommend that people look at that one also.
Definitely. They're great. They're great. Susan Meyer, I see you.
I'm a great champion of Sabrina Farber. I have to go on that record.
Susan is a super volunteer also.
I'm a super volunteer. I just wanted to say that because I've written so many cards to vote forward that are sitting in my attic ready to be mailed, I just want to say that Texas is exhausted. They're finished. It's time for Wisconsin. You can choose your state now. And I have chosen Wisconsin, but for Vote Forward, you can now choose your state. Hurry up and do it. I choose Wisconsin. Choose your own state, but get that vote out. And Vote Forward is, I swear by Vote Forward, and I swear by Sabrina. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Susan, for that little plug. And I see Daniel Jacobson. You got your hand up?
Myself. Okay.
Yes.
I know I've done some phone banking before, and one of the questions that we've asked when talking to people is, are you registered to vote? Because obviously people cannot go and vote in any way unless they're already registered. Now, what kind of a window of time do we have at this point for people to register to vote, to make sure that
it depends on the state. Quite honestly, today was, I think tomorrow's the deadline. Today's the deadline for New York. Some of the other states have deadlines next week and the week after. All of these organizations that are doing registration are going to know that, so they're not going to send you to places where it's too late to register.
What kind of qualifications does a person have to have in order to register? The United States citizenship, certainly. A verifiable address?
Yeah, you need to have a residency, and some states require a minimum of time at that residence in order to vote in that particular district.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. And who's next? Are there any other hands I'm missing? I'm trying to keep track of everybody.
Hannah,
are you raising your hand again? Boy, you're like, frequent flyer miles tonight. What's up? Yes? Or did I already answer your question and I forget to put your hand down?
I think that might be the case.
Yes, that might be it. Okay.
By the way, the deadline for voter registration in New York is October 9th.
October 9th.
And I will say that the fastest way I could figure that out was actually by going to cbst.org/vote.
Yay!
You all thought we had such a terrible website. We actually have a great website. Great. Lisa Brown, what do you want to say? But you have to unmute yourself first. I see you talking, but.
Hi. Yes, I'm in bed. I'm not feeling too well. Sorry, but
I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too. Not COVID. But I was a poll worker also last year, and the addresses are really problematic. That was most of it, just to tag on to what Harold was saying, that, why ballots get returned. A lot of times it's because people didn't move and didn't update their address.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to tell everybody, I plan to vote early in person, if God willing, everything goes well, on October 25th. This is the first Sunday, because I don't want to vote on Shabbat. October 24th is the first day of early voting.
Yep.
I want to say one other thing, and I want to hear from people. I'm going to put it up on Facebook. I want to hear from people if you vote then or vote early. The early voting place is different than your regular voting place.
Totally different. Yep.
And that's really important. All that information is on our votes. If you say the place again, on our website.
Yes.
But I'm looking forward to voting early, and then I'm looking forward to having a vote watch party on November 3rd. Who's going to be there?
I'm going to be working at a polling place.
Yeah, so is Randy. I don't have the patience. I just know myself. I can do a lot of things, but looking up addresses, I'll just kill somebody, which is really not what you should do.
5 in the morning to 11 at night. It's a very long day.
I don't mind the long day. I can work a long day. Ask me what my Yom Kippur was like.
It's the people.
you know, it's the detail stuff of looking up. It's just not, I wouldn't be a good poll worker. I'll be a good, you know, I can do many things. I'll bring you coffee, Harold. You tell me where you're poll working.
Right. You're a good rabbi. I think you got a job. It's all good.
I work very long hours. I just can't. You have to know yourself, right? You have to know what you do.
Yes.
So Penny is barking.
Is barking. It's time to go. She's like, it's time.
Time to go. People, this is so inspiring. Nobody is alone. We're all in this together. And thank you to those who have taken leadership at CBST. And thank you to all of you who are doing something. You want the world to look back. And when they say, what did you do leading up to the election of 2020? You were part of this great CBST Votes team. Every single person who came tonight is part of the CBST Votes team.
Absolutely.
So mazel tov to everybody for being part of the team. I love all of you. I'm voting on October 25th. Poo, poo, poo.
Yes, poo, poo, poo. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget, you can contact us if you have any other questions. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse Katz, for all of your support, and to Bruce Roberts.
Bruce, yes, thank you both.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Go Team Democracy.
Moedim l'simcha.
Hagim uzmanim l'sason.